October 2012. Mount Rainier, Washington State. A 4-person research team went missing. The National Park Service attributed the loss to a crevasse collapse during routine survey work. No recovery mission was launched. The following year, search and rescue coordinator Edward Calloway retired after 31 years of service. He never spoke publicly about the incident. In 2019, an audio recording said to be of Calloway surfaced online and was removed within 48 hours. This is said to be the transcript of that recording. My name is Edward Calloway. Most people called me Ed. For 31 years, I ran search and rescue operations out of Longmire on the south side of Mount Rainier. I've pulled hikers out of crevasses at 14,000 feet. I've carried bodies down the disappointment cleaver in weather that would kill most people standing still. I've done over 400 extractions. I say this not to impress anyone, but to make something clear. I am not a man who panics. I am not a man who sees things that aren't there. And I need whoever hears this to understand that before I say what I'm about to say. In October of 2012, I was 8 weeks from retirement. I had my paperwork in. I had a cabin in Packwood I'd been fixing up for 2 years. I was done. And I should have been done. But on October 14th, I received a dispatch call that did not come through normal channels. It did not come from NPS. It came from FEMA, Region X, the federal emergency district that covers Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska. In 31 years, I had never once received a direct tasking from FEMA. That was my first indication that something was wrong. It would not be the last. The briefing was conducted over a secure phone line by a woman who identified herself only as Regional Coordinator Ainsley. She told me that a 4-person geological survey team operating under a federal research permit had missed their scheduled check-ins 72 hours prior. Their last known position was a temporary research camp approximately 1 mile east of the Carbon Glacier on the north face of Rainier. She said a federal liaison would meet us at the Ipsut Creek trailhead the following morning and accompany us to the site. I asked standard questions. What were they studying? How long had they been deployed? Were they equipped with emergency beacons? Ainsley answered none of these questions. Instead, she gave me 3 directives. 1. Do not use standard NPS radio frequencies. A set of encrypted Motorola XTS 5000 handsets would be provided at the trailhead. 2. Do not log this mission through the NPS dispatch system. 3. Do not discuss the operation with anyone outside the extraction team. I should have refused. Logging a mission is not optional. It is how we ensure accountability. It is how we ensure that if something goes wrong, someone knows where to find us. But I was 62 years old and 8 weeks from a pension, and I had spent 3 decades following orders from people in offices who had never set foot on a glacier. So I said yes, and I picked my team. Danny Voss, 26, former Marine, 2 years on the SAR unit, best climber I ever worked with. Luis Herrera, 44, paramedic, 12 years of mountain rescue experience. Quiet, reliable, the kind of man you want behind you when the weather turns. Karen Oleska, 38, logistics and communications. She'd run base ops on over 100 missions, and then myself. 4 was a lean team for an 11-mile approach into the north face, but Ainsley had been clear. Small footprint, no exceptions. We arrived at the Ipsut Creek trailhead at 5:30 in the morning on October 15th. A black Chevrolet Suburban was already parked at the gate. Leaning against it was a woman in her early 50s. Short grey hair, no NPS uniform, no FEMA identification. She wore a dark blue soft-shell jacket with no insignia and carried 2 hard-shelled Pelican cases, the kind used for sensitive electronic equipment. She introduced herself as Dr. Lena Moss. She did not say who she worked for. She did not shake anyone's hand. We loaded packs. I carry an Osprey Ether 70 on extended ops. 45 pounds base weight, including an MSR Lightning Ascent snowshoe kit, a Petzelquark ice axe, and a standard NPS trauma bag. Moss handed each of us an encrypted radio handset and a laminated card with channel assignments. Military spec, not civilian. Danny noticed this immediately. He looked at me. I shook my head. Not now. Before we moved out, Moss asked a question I will never forget. She looked at each of us in turn and said, quote, "Has anyone on your team ever experienced auditory hallucinations at altitude?" End quote. Karen laughed. I told Moss it was a routine extraction and that my team was fit for duty. Moss didn't smile. She wrote something in a small black notebook and put it in her jacket pocket. Then she said, "Let's go." The hike to the Carbon Glacier camp was 11 miles through dense, old-growth forest, followed by 3 miles of moraine and glacial rubble. We made good time, but as we ascended past the 7,000-foot line, I noticed something that bothered me. The temperature was wrong. It was mid-October. At that elevation, we should have been at 25 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. My wrist thermometer read 48. The snow was melting in patches, not randomly. The melt patterns were almost geometric. Clean lines, repeating shapes. Luis pointed it out first. He said it looked like someone had laid a grid on the snowfield and melted specific squares. I told him it was geothermal venting. I didn't believe that, but I needed my team focused. We reached the research camp at 1340. 4 tents, 2-person shelters arranged in a diamond pattern, all intact. No signs of avalanche, no signs of animal activity, no signs of struggle of any kind. And that's what disturbed me. In 31 years, I have never once arrived at a missing person's site and found everything in perfect order. Danny cleared the first tent, zipped shut from the outside. Inside, the occupant's gear was neatly packed, sleeping bag rolled and strapped, notebook stacked on top of a Pelican case, water bottles full. It looked like someone had prepared to leave and then simply ceased to exist. All 4 tents were identical, zipped from the outside, gear packed, sleeping bags rolled, but inside out, every single one. I have seen hypothermia victims undress themselves in the cold. I have seen altitude psychosis cause people to organize their belongings in repetitive patterns. But I have never seen 4 people independently roll their sleeping bags inside out and then zip themselves in from the outside. That is not possible. Someone, or something, arranged this scene after the researchers were already gone. Karen found the field notebooks. She called me over with a voice I'd never heard from her before. Flat, controlled, scared. I walked to her position and she handed me an open notebook. Every page was filled with the same sentence written in blue ballpoint ink. The handwriting started neat and controlled at the top of the first page and gradually deteriorated across the subsequent pages until it was barely legible. The sentence read, "It learns the voice first, then the face." There were 4 notebooks. All 4 contained the same sentence, hundreds of times, thousands. I looked at Moss. She was already photographing the notebooks with a small digital camera. She did not seem surprised. I ordered the team to establish a perimeter search. Standard grid pattern, 50-meter spacing. Danny took the north quadrant towards the glacier edge. Luis took east. Karen held base. Moss stayed at the camp, cataloguing the researchers' equipment with what I can only describe as clinical efficiency. At 14:23, Danny radioed in. His voice was steady but careful. "Ed, I've got a visual on one of the researchers, female, approximately 40, seated on a rock formation near the crevasse edge. She's facing away from me, approximately 200 yards north of camp." I told him to hold position. Do not approach. I radioed Moss on the encrypted channel. Her response was immediate, no hesitation. She said, "Is she talking?" I relayed the question to Danny. He paused. "She's saying my name." "Ed. How the hell does she know my name?" Moss was already moving toward me. She grabbed my arm hard. "That's not a fucking person. Pull him back, now." I radioed Danny. I told him to withdraw to camp immediately. I used his call sign. I used the emergency withdrawal code. Danny did not withdraw. He was a Marine. He saw a woman sitting alone on a glacier in October. His training told him she was a victim. His instincts told him to help. He approached. His radio was open. I heard his footsteps on the ice. I heard him call out to her. I heard him stop. 11 seconds of silence. I counted. Then his voice came through the radio. It was different. Flat. Monotone. Wrong. "Ed. Jesus Christ. She has my fucking face." The radio cut to static. We never heard from Danny Voss again. I turned to Moss and told her she had 60 seconds to tell me exactly what was happening, or I was pulling my team off the mountain and filing a federal incident report. She didn't argue. She didn't hesitate. And that was perhaps the most disturbing part. She had rehearsed this. She told me the 4 researchers were not a geological survey team. They were an acoustic sciences unit funded through a DARPA subcontract and administered through a shell company. Their objective was to study a persistent infrasound anomaly emanating from beneath the Carbon Glacier. Infrasound, frequencies between 1 and 20 Hz below the threshold of human hearing. At certain frequencies, between 7 and 12 Hz specifically, prolonged infrasound exposure causes predictable neurological effects: anxiety, visual disturbance, difficulty breathing, a pervasive sense of being watched. These are documented, peer-reviewed effects. But the anomaly beneath the Carbon Glacier was different. The researchers had identified a frequency pattern that did not match any known geological source. It was rhythmic, patterned, and after 72 hours of continuous exposure, it caused something that Moss described with a term I had never heard before. She called it psychotic mimicry. The affected subjects begin to replicate the speech patterns, vocal tones, and eventually the physical mannerisms of people around them. Not consciously, not voluntarily, the brain rewires itself to compulsively mirror whoever is nearby. The subject is still conscious, still aware, but they cannot stop. They hear a voice and their own voice changes to match it. They see a face and their own expressions reshape to mirror it. The researchers didn't go missing. They were changed, and they were still on the mountain, waiting, listening, learning every word we said over the radio. I gave the order. Radios off. All of them. We go dark. From this point on, hand signals only. We move by compass bearing south-southwest, back toward Ipswich Creek. No stops, no calls, no noise. We moved in single file, myself on point, Luis behind me, Karen behind him, Moss at the rear. Visibility had dropped to 30 feet. The fog had come in fast, the way it does on Rainier when the temperature gradient shifts, and we were navigating by compass and pace count alone. At approximately 16 o'clock, Moss fell on a steep moraine scramble. One of her Pelican cases cracked open on impact. Karen helped her up. I secured the case, and when I did, I saw what was inside. It was not a biological containment kit. There were no hazmat supplies, no sample containers. Inside were 2 directional microphones, a high-sensitivity field recorder, and a leather-bound journal filled with handwritten entries. I opened it. The entry, dated October 12th, 2 days before our deployment, it read, "Subject's mimicry accuracy improved 40% between day 3 and day 5 of continuous exposure. Vocal pattern replication now indistinguishable from source at distances greater than 50 meters. Recommend extending the exposure window for the next deployment. Request additional control subjects for comparative baseline." Control subjects. I read that phrase 3 times. Then I looked at Moss. She was watching me. She did not try to take the journal back. She did not try to explain. She simply said, "The extraction was always for the data, Sergeant. Not for them. Not for you." We were never there to save the researchers. We were the next test. 4 new voices, 4 new faces. Fresh inputs for whatever was happening on that glacier. Moss was there to observe how long it took the anomaly to affect an unprepared team versus one that had been briefed. We were the control group. Danny was already gone, and the clock was running on the rest of us. We moved fast after that. I did not speak to Moss again. At approximately 17:30, Luis, who had been silent for the entire descent, stopped walking. I turned around. He was standing perfectly still in the fog, staring at me. Then he opened his mouth and said, "We move by compass bearing, south-southwest, back toward Ipswich Creek." With my own voice, my exact cadence, my own words, the exact sentence I had spoken 90 minutes earlier. Karen stepped back. Moss started writing in a notebook. Luis blinked. He looked confused. Then he said it again. My own voice, my own words, exactly the same, like a recording played on a loop. And then he said Karen's name, in Karen's voice. And then he turned toward the fog and began walking north, back toward the glacier. I called his name once. He didn't respond. He kept walking, and I made the decision that has kept me awake for 7 years. I let him go. I turned south, and I kept moving, because I had 2 people behind me who were still themselves, and I could not save a man who was no longer the man I knew. We reached the Ipswich Creek trailhead at 21:10. It was dark. 2 black SUVs were parked at the gate. No markings, no plates I could read. A man in a dark jacket handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a 7-page non-disclosure agreement with a federal classification header I had never seen before. Level 3. 7-year term. He told me that from now on, Danny Voss and Luis Herrera were lost in a crevasse fall during routine search and rescue training on the Carbon Glacier. He told me that no federal research camp had ever existed at the site. He told me that Dr. Lena Moss did not exist. I signed the document. So did Karen. We drove home in separate vehicles. I never spoke to Karen again. Ed Calloway passed away on March 15, 2021, at a memory care facility in Eatonville, Washington. The cause of death was listed as complications from early onset dementia. He was 69 years old. The Carbon Glacier infrasound anomaly has never been acknowledged by DARPA, FEMA, or the National Park Service. As of this recording, the north face of Mount Rainier remains open to the public. No advisories have been issued. Whether you believe in Edward Calloway's story is, as always, entirely up to you. Thank you for listening. Please leave a like and subscribe.